Great. Welcome to the January 7th Academic Standards Meeting. We're here to talk, are we starting with?
That's what we're going to
Okay.
do first.
We're here to do some curriculum reviews. We're going to start with the visual arts. There's so few of us, just for the benefit of people who are listening or will watch this later at home. Why don't we just all say who's here? So I'm Denise Brooks.
Beth Lynch, the visual arts coordinator.
Barry Desco, Director of Secondary Education.
Joe McClay, Director of Elementary Education.
Pat Erickson, English Language Arts Curriculum Coordinator, K-6.
Andrea Houston Lehman, also English Language Arts Coordinator, middle and high school.
Mary Ann Malicious, I teach 5th grade.
Phil Foster, I'm a resident.
School board. Dictate school board.
And Robert Frazier, Superintendent.
So we're going to start with the art K-12 curriculum with Beth Lynch.
All right, so what we're going to do is take a close look at elementary, middle, and high school programs. But before we jump into the specifics, there's been a big focus overall as the world's kind of evolving and changing and 21st century art is changing. There's been a big focus for us as an entire department to kind of get together and look at what we're doing and how we're integrating standards and what we're teaching our kids. So we're going to take an overall look at the arts first, and then once we take an overall look at the arts, we'll kind of get a little bit more into grade level by grade level. So while we wait for that, I'll just keep talking. I think generally district-wide, there has been somewhat of a shift of what you see and what you expect when you walk into an art classroom. I think most people walk into a classroom and they expect that what they're going to see is the making of a product, that all kids are going to be hands-on on their own making a product. And while that's a focus and part of what we do in the classroom, and we've always talked about what we want our students to know, what do we want them to understand, what do we want them to do, that product piece is really only a small portion of what goes on in our art classrooms. And there's a lot that goes in behind that I don't necessarily know that the average parent or community member might realize. Good. Mr. Desco.
I'm not able to advance it at all.
Cartoon is space. Like slides. So it's no slides.
Okay, we got it.
Very interesting.
Just not working. Give me the page up there, yeah.
And it's neat because
I'll
you
just
do
have
that.
to- yep, so
You
you're right.
give me one more. Thank you. So I think this visual gives a good idea of what we're doing in our art classroom. So we try to focus on how we integrate these 6 different pieces together. So the creation of the product is still there and it's important, but it's not so much focused on the word product, but more on what are we doing as a process to make that creation. So what are all the steps the kids are going through? What are they learning? What are they experiencing? What skills are they using? So that is one small piece. We usually always start with our enduring understandings. Those are our big ideas, our overarching aims. What behaviors are we looking for? What different thinking skills are we trying to teach our kids? Tied into that is essential questions. Those are what are going to help the students process their thoughts and ideas. And there's essential questions tied to every single class. The higher level thinking, that's where you're going to see the kids working with investigating, breaking things that are traditional that they would see in art, and trying to find a pursuit of true creativity, not just mimicking or copying what's always been there, but what are we doing that's taking it to that next step, to that next level. The artistic process, that's the process as a whole. So going from what is your idea to how do you conceptualize your idea, how do you experiment to get your idea on a piece of paper or in a piece of clay, how are we tying in your imagination, how are you tying in your personal identity, how are you coming up with a plan, and then finally, how do you execute that plan? And then lastly, which is a huge piece that we've been talking about a lot lately, is the relationship to self. So as a student artist, how are you bringing yourself and your likes and your interests into your artwork? And more importantly, how are you trying to challenge yourself to improve and grow through your work? So a lot of the newer 21st century artists, when you look at their work, it's not just about making a painting. There's so much more behind that and how they put themselves in the painting. So we're trying to get that idea across to kids. Thank you. So all 3 levels, we are organized the same way. In Council Rock, we follow the Pennsylvania state standards, which are kind of old at this point. They were adopted in 1994. We have new standards from the National Coalition of the Arts that was adopted in end of 2014 and was just slightly revised at the beginning of 2015. And while we're tying those into what we do, since Pennsylvania hasn't formally adopted them yet, we're still following what we do with Pennsylvania. So there's 4 main sections: art production, that's the creative piece, that's all of those things that were on the last slide and how we tie those together. The art history, that's where we tie in learning about cultures and artworks of the past and artists of the past and all of those things that lead us to where we are today. The art criticism piece is how a student evaluates and responds to a work of art. So whether they're responding to other people's art or their own art, that all comes into the criticism. And then aesthetics is the beliefs that they use to drive their own creative instruction. What do they find beautiful? What is something that they like? What looks put together and finished, and craftsman's there, and all of those pieces tie in with the aesthetics piece. So then you take that, and while that's the back piece, the kind of hands-on what's actually getting done and what our students doing in our classroom, we organize in these 4 areas. So there are our essential questions. Every grade level from 1st grade through 8th grade has 4 essential questions that are kind of like the overarching piece that drive the course. And then once you get up into the high school, each course itself has its 4 essential questions. So for an elementary, the question would be more like, well, what purpose does art have? Why did artists even make art to begin with? And then when you get into the high school, you're looking at questions like, in a given culture, who decides what is considered art and why? So they kind of scaffold, so the questions become a little bit more deep for the older kids compared to the younger kids. When we're talking about skills, they're sequentially designed, and they go from 1st grade right up to the high school when they get to the more detailed classes. So a skill involving color for a 1st grader would be learning about primary colors and what they are. 2nd grade builds on that, and they're talking about mixing primary colors to make secondary colors. 3rd grade, they're learning about the color wheel and how the color wheel is put together. 5th and 6th grade, they're learning about color schemes and mixing colors beyond the secondary colors. And then 7th and 8th grade, they take those same themes of colors and talk about how colors affect their mood and emotion and feeling of a painting. So all the skills are made so that they slowly build upon each other from 1st grade all the way up until high school. When we get to content knowledge, that is the information that we want our students to leave knowing when they leave our classroom. Our exemplars are all housed within our content knowledge. So each course has a set of paintings, sculptures, architecture, drawings that drive what we're teaching about in that course and what the kids are learning about. And then within the last 2 years, we've just refined, we have a vocabulary list for each of our courses. So no matter what building a child is in Council Rock, every 1st grade artist has the same set of vocabulary terms, exactly the same definitions, so that as they move from one building to another, or as teachers move from one building to another, we can be sure all our students are getting the exact same thing, the same words, the same language, the same explanations, so that we're all kind of on the same page together. So moving into just elementary, right now we have 8 visual arts teachers that service our 10 schools. So every school has its own teacher except one that has rotating teachers in there. Our recent focuses are on technology integration. So within the last few years, we've been doing a lot with iPads in our classrooms, with the iStop Motion program, which is where kids are actually making sculptures and moving them and making their own films. We use the smart boards with the kids. We've been using digital media and having them photograph their work and record their work, trying to get the technology that is in the hands of artists in the hands of our children. They go home and they play with iPads and they do all these things. So we want to teach them the right skills that an artist would use to do those things. In terms of student reflection and self-reflection, all of our Council Rock students keep journals and sketchbooks. So that's where they keep all their thoughts recorded. So whether it's their sketches going into making a project, or midway through they're reflecting on the ideas in the project and how they want to refine it, it's all kept in one central location. So by the end of the school year, you can look back and see everything that the elementary child has done from start to finish. We've been talking a lot about connecting literacy and the arts. We know our kids process through writing. And so we make connections not only in what they write about their own artwork, but in how other artists write and how other artists write their artistic statements and how they explain their works, and even using books to inspire what, especially at the 1st and 2nd grade level, using books to inspire what the kids are making and how they're seeing artists illustrate their words through pictures. And then the last focus has really been on introducing contemporary art and artists. If you look at the Council Rock curriculum, the latest dated exemplar in our curriculum is from 1974. And in the world of art, a lot has happened between 1974 and 2015. So the exemplars that are in there are really important for the themes and the ideas that they teach our kids. And I think the important part of not having the later exemplars is that there's so much going on in the world of art in the last 20 years that it's nice to be able to pick and choose and tie things in that are relevant for a specific lesson without having to have that set every year you're teaching the same exact one. We kind of have the freedom to really introduce our kids to installation art and performance art and what does a contemporary public sculpture look like that might be there today that's not there tomorrow. So we have a lot of creative freedom with introducing students to ideas in the contemporary world. Continuing on, in terms of materials you'll see our students using, they really get a well-rounded education in elementary school. They're drawing, they're painting, they're doing printmaking, they're doing ceramics, they're doing sculpture, they're doing in all kinds of new and exciting ways. I should have had digital art up there because now we're doing digital art and movie making. It's kind of unbelievable when you see what some of our youngest kids can tell you and show you about their artwork. And the main goal of our elementary areas is that we're really slowly building them up from 1 year to the next year, getting them ready for middle school. And then by the time they get to high school, they have this huge toolkit and toolbox of things they can draw on, not only in the art room, but how are they using their art to organize their science presentations and how can they use their art skills to put something into one of their English projects. So we really try and show them how you tie these things across, especially with the elementary performance assessment. It gives us a chance to show our kids, like, how do you use art to inspire a presentation you're going to make in front of a group when you're public speaking. And I think that we're really setting them up for some successes as they grow older. So that's elementary. On to middle school, we realize as middle school art teachers, this is really our last chance to have all of our Council Rock art students in our rooms. Once they get to high school, art becomes an elective. So we may have these children in our classrooms again, and we may not. We hope we get them all. But we realize that we're not going to. So our main goal in 7th and 8th grade over the last 2 years has really shifted to show our students how do we use all of those content knowledge and essential questions and skills to drive home a connection to what are they going to do in the real world with this? How am I going to take this and actually use it? How am I going to take this and apply it to what I'm doing that's not actually in the art room? We talk a lot about how artists and designers experiment with different skills and what are known skills and what are things that they don't know about that are really making this new artwork come to life. There's artists that make work out of sugar and then it disappears. And there's artists that make work where you walk by and all of a sudden it lights up and then you're gone and it disappears. The things that people are doing by pushing the limits are really unbelievable. And so we're trying to teach our kids that you can do some of those things too on your own. And then in general, we want to really create an appreciation and a passion for the arts, that you don't necessarily have to make it, you don't necessarily have to love it, but to become appreciative of what's around you that was created by people, even down to your clothes and your video games and the advertisements and the magazines, and so much of that is drawn from an art background, so becoming appreciative of those types of things. In our high school, our course offerings include drawing, painting, metal, ceramics, sculpture. At the basic level, we run first and second levels of all of those courses, and we've seen a huge shift in the last couple years of ceramics and metals, especially the kids are really, really drawn to it. I think it's because it's hands-on and it's messy and it's different and it's something you can draw and paint in a lot of places. You can't do ceramics and blow metal with blowtorch in a lot of places, and the kids are really drawn to it. So right now we're actually running 4 ceramics courses out of South, and I think we're running 5 out of North right now. So our enrollment is fantastic and the kids love what they're doing. In addition to that, we have AP Art History, which just completely overhauled its curriculum. It's a really exciting new course that the kids this year who are experiencing it seem to be giving much more positive feedback than in the past. We have AP 2D, AP 3D, and AP Design. Last year, of all our students that submitted their portfolios, the majority of them came back with the highest possible score they could. And consistently, we get feedback from the AP board that our kids are just hitting it out of the ballpark with our portfolios, which makes us really excited because we view that as a 1st grade through 12th grade learning process. And what we're doing is really working for those kids. The other thing we're seeing with portfolios is that our students are not necessarily just making portfolios because they want to be artists anymore. If you were to look at the art program, even 10 years ago, the majority of kids in that classroom were there because they wanted to be an artist. They didn't know how, they didn't know why, but they wanted to be an artist. And if you look at our classrooms now, you're seeing athletes and scientists and mathematicians, and the kids are telling us that the work they're making is becoming a supplement to their college application. And some of the colleges nearby have reached out to our art teachers and said, this is really cool that the kids are giving these kinds of works to us to show us what they can do besides academics, because it's not really a strongly graded academic subject. So it really shows another side to the kids and another way that they can apply their knowledge. So it's really, we've seen a lot of exciting things go on at the high school. If you were to take a peek in our room, I think you're going to see it's a lot different than most other classrooms. Most other classrooms, the kids are not up and talking and interacting constantly. You don't expect them to sit in a chair looking forward. You expect them to kind of sit how we sit, across the table, talking to the person across from them, starting with one thing, getting rid of that, starting a second thing, getting rid of that, starting a third one. That's not uncommon in our rooms, and we inspire kids to keep trying over, do it more, try and push it more. You will see kids with blow torches, you'll see kids sitting at pottery wheels, you'll see kids using construction paper, you'll see printmaking going on. There's so many different techniques. You'll see our middle school and our high school kids experimenting a lot with Wacom tablets, which is a tablet that's digitally connected to the computer, which turns their tablet into the screen that they're drawing on. You'll see iPads in their hands. Our elementary kids have Osmos, these little gadgets that they interact with that show up on an iPad screen. So there's a lot of really neat materials that you'll see them working with, and I think you see a lot of innovation going on in our room. We try not to be stagnant. We're really trying to push the envelope of what our education looks like, and I think we're doing a really nice job at it. In terms of the community, we really are trying as a department to take the art out of our classrooms and put it out in the world of Council Rock. Just this year, we had a Scooper Bowl event in November where we sold tickets for people in the community to buy a handmade clay bowl by one of our students. And they came to an event and they had the ice cream bowl filled with an ice cream sundae. Our entire art department was there, and then we donated about $4,000 to the Make-A-Wish Foundation through the art department and through all of our kids that came that night. We have our district art show. The gallery at the Rock is new this year. It's an interactive art exhibit. It has an iPad, a TV screen. It has an artwork from every school in Council Rock. There's 2D work and 3D work, and it travels from building to building around the district. It was at the admin building in the summer. It's going to be at the district art show, and then over the summer, our hope is to get it into local banks and some local stores so that community that's not in our actual schools can see some of that work. Newtown Middle School just decorated the entire governor's mansion for the holidays. We're the first school ever to have done that. They've never used student artwork until this year. So that was huge for us. I think Newtown Middle sent 50 or 60 kids to the governor's mansion to meet with the governor and have a private tour and see their artwork on display. And then just on a normal day-to-day basis, any day you go into Go Bananas in Richboro, our kids' artwork is in there. You go into the Northampton Library, the kids' artwork is in there. A lot of the storefronts like Newtown had a lot of student artwork in the windows for Halloween. So we really tried to get it out of a classroom setting and into a real-world setting. And then our Solfaing students just had their artwork displayed at the Michener Museum of Art in the Gift of Giving. So it was on display, and then it was given to families in need as gifts of appreciation during the holidays. So they got an actual piece of Council Rock artwork as an art gift to display in their homes. So that was really exciting for our students. And then lastly, just to wrap up, I mentioned at the beginning that we were having new visual art standards, and while Pennsylvania didn't adopt them, as a team of Council Rock art teachers, we've kind of adopted them on the side. And while they're not formal and they're not required of us to teach, we're slowly figuring out ways to integrate them so that when Pennsylvania says, hey, these are our new standards, we can say, we got it, we're already doing this, we've been doing this for years, and we've already figured out ways to tie it together. And that's the visual arts in Council Rock.
Questions for you guys? Awesome, hey, thanks.
Thank you.
That was great. So that transformation from kids that were mostly aspiring artists to reaching, you described the athletes and all kinds of things. How did that happen?
I think just slowly from seeing some of the new skills and the new methods that we're teaching our children. A curriculum has been our art curriculum for a really long time. And I think more so in the past 10 years, teachers have been more willing to take that and use it as a driving force. So it's here, and this is what I'm going to teach, but more recently, we're finding ways to connect it to other things. They're not just learning that, and I think the excitement of seeing how does it connect to what people are doing today, and how does it connect to what people did 5 years ago, is really hooking the kids into realizing that it has real world applications to today. And I think that's where it came from.
And so, I mean, in that description, it was really driven by the teachers. It wasn't coming from in curriculum coordinator. It wasn't really coming from administration or central
I
office.
honestly don't think it was. We have a fantastic group of art teachers that really collaborates and works together, and we push each other further, and it's done fantastic things for how we take this curriculum and put it in the hands of our kids.
And so when you're hiring, you're getting new people to come.
Yes.
Has that changed as you transformed the program?
I think we still get new people. I think our standard in Council Rock has really gone up. I think as we see these people, the things that we're looking for and the people that we're willing to take on board, what we used to maybe find as normal, we've kind of pushed up a couple notches.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. Are there other school districts or other schools that you're looking at? Like you say that college admissions folks have been really pleased in the college board, but out there, are you seeing other schools or districts that you think, oh, that's kind of cool, I wish we could be doing that?
Do you know what? I think we're honestly setting a trend lately.
Yeah.
Like Council Rock had a Facebook art page we started last year, and I sit with all the other coordinators for all the other art departments, and no one had done that, and no one had thought of that. And so I think we have a team of teachers that's not willing to take risks. And I think other schools have the same thing. Other schools have teachers, but we kind of share it. We're not afraid to share our ideas and put it out there, and I think that helps.
And so what about field trips? Are we
Our high schools take field trips.
Okay.
Our high school students take field trips. In the summer, they take unsponsored trips. Every summer, our kids go to Europe. There's about 30 of them that go. This past summer, they went to Italy, which is not sponsored by Council Rock, but it's as a group. The art department takes them there. Throughout the school year, our high school students take field trips. Our middle school students just went to the Governor's Mansion. Our elementary schools to date do not take art field trips.
So the art show.
They take it to the art show. We could take them to we could take them anywhere you want, though. We'd be happy to take field trips.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because we have young kids, we've always loved the sculpture garden, J&J Sculpture Garden. So it's been over the years such a delightful place for them to wander around and see. I mean, there's such a variety of approaches and then so the permanent installations are fantastic, but then the ones that flip over are really good too. So I was kind of wondering whether field trips there.
TJ, the Hillcrest teacher has actually looked at taking a trip there. Some of us have done trips with our art clubs outside of school. Like on a Saturday, we're going to meet here and everybody come and they do.
That's great.
But as a whole school to take a bus, I think financially to get them there and then what they're missing from the
Well, if
place.
there's knuckleheads on the school board there, that can free up money. So I'm just saying that.
So if the money happens to be there, the art department would love to have it. We
Yeah.
can just say that.
I have a question along those lines, but first I want to make a quick comment. You'll pardon a personal indulgence. We had the wonderful experience. One of our kids suddenly discovered ceramics and metal and so forth in 11th grade and just became passionate about it. And in 12th grade did the 3D AP and just produced a phenomenal portfolio. And she didn't even know that she loved art until 11th grade. And that's purely the result of the teachers. And it was a wonderful thing to see. But that leads me to my question. The work that she did on ceramics and metal and then her 3D project was really very dependent on the studio and the equipment in the studio and so forth. And so I'm wondering if you all feel like you have adequate facilities.
I think we have really nice facilities in Council Rock. I think slowly over the years, our teachers are growing them with the funds that we have. I mean, there's certainly always more. You want more. Who doesn't want more? Everybody wants more. But the things that our students are able to get through the budgets we've had in the past and through creative budgeting and teachers raising money, I think our kids are really fortunate and lucky with what we put in their hands.
Yeah,
they seem-
yeah.
And I was just going to add, through the coordinator, we've been trying, like the elementary schools, even the middle and high schools, we've been adding a kiln every year, replacing the old kilns. So, and they run what's it killing around now?
It's about $3,000.
So every year we try to replace one because they're 20 years old, 25 years old, they're breaking down. So some of the equipment I know that the previous art curriculum coordinator was able to help replace some of the high school equipment for the metals classes because of, they take good care of them, they buy good stuff and it lasts long, but like you're saying, it does wear out over time. So we've tried to keep what they need to run those programs.
Our teachers also love grants. We write a lot of grants and we've been fortunate to get quite a few grants, and so that's kind of helped out what we have as well.
I think this is fantastic. The art show is like one of my most favorite things.
I know, you always come.
I always come because, first of all, the talent is unbelievable. Now, and this comes from someone who had like no artistic talent. But it's interesting for me because my kids are older and I've seen the evolution. When my kids were in elementary school, art really was more about just the drawing, the painting, whatever. And, my kids don't have that talent either. So they love their art classes. But what I've seen in the evolution as you've introduced different techniques and technology, that allows the kids that don't have maybe those classic talents to embrace art in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. And that absolutely is what's driving your increased enrollment in all of these things. And it's just amazing because when I'm in the school, particularly in the high schools, if you walk into those art rooms, that's like the best place in the world to be because those kids want to be there so much and they are so loving it. And it's also an interesting thing because you're talking about people coming back to you at colleges and saying good things about your portfolios. Well, in another part of my life, I do interviews for my university. And the model for college admissions is changing because more and more schools are becoming test optional. More and more schools are becoming portfolio focused, not just for art. So like for my alma mater, you can not, you don't have to take an SAT or an ACT. You can submit a portfolio, which is very broadly defined. It could be things that are made in an art class, but it could be writing, it could be everything. But the whole notion of approaching your education and approaching how you display yourself in a creative way is all fed into what they're learning here. So it's just the way things are changing, in the world, that we are able to help those skills is amazing. And it is incredible to me, the talent that our kids have and how the teachers bring that out. It's really a great thing. And actually there was one thing that you didn't have on the slide. I don't remember what it was called, but I went earlier this year. There was a night that the art department did something in conjunction with the World Languages at South.
Oh, at South.
Which was bringing artists and history together, and I love that because when you can make those co-curricular, those connections, there were some kids that were talking about the history and the things going on in the world, but then they were also talking about the artists. And it was great. So I would love to see more of that kind of stuff too. So it's great work. I love it.
Okay, thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Okay, so hi, I'm Pat Erickson again. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of information with you about the English language arts at the elementary level in Council Rock. So, ELA includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and that's how I'm going to divide the presentation for you. I'm also going to talk about some of the materials that we use to deliver instruction. And some of our materials I've listed up here are, we do have Journeys, which is a core reading program. We have Journeys Writing for Pennsylvania. In our district, we also have units of writing, teaching the qualities of writing. We have Being a Writer, where we also do have an option to include novel study into our reading and trade books and guided reading. For speaking and listening, it's ongoing instruction. It includes collaborative discussions, such as morning meeting, time when the kids meet with their class in the morning to have some discussions, individual sharing, turning and talking, and also presenting research. Okay, so elementary reading, K to 6. Our emphasis is on comprehension, vocabulary, making connections among ideas, between ideas, with focus on textual evidence. Our foundational skills are more of an emphasis at the primary level in the younger grades. Our foundational skills include like phonics, high frequency words, fluency, and they are the emphasis more grades 1, K1 and 2. The emphasis is placed on comprehension in the upper grades, but fluency, phonics, and word recognition are also taught depending on student needs. So everything is based on student needs or instruction for learning. So whatever students might need at that time, that's what the teachers would be instructing them on. Our core reading program is research-based. I've listed the researchers at the bottom of the slide, which are some very famous researchers who've done a lot in the area of reading and writing. The model that we use is the gradual release of responsibility model, which is modeling I do as a teacher, and then we do together in guided practice, either as whole class or in small groups, before the students are ever expected to do independent practice. So we always follow that. I do, we do, you do. We integrate technology and digital sources. We have a spiral curriculum, grades K through 6, and it focuses on the 5 big ideas in reading. And it is a cohesive program, which does include word study, vocabulary, spelling, grammar, and handwriting.
On the digital resources, so one thing that and this is just from my personal experience, that at least at Goodnow in one grade or a couple of grades, they have this Kid Biz, but it's not in every grade. And I wasn't sure whether it was in every school and whether it was, there were budget restrictions and whether it was, anyway, can you say something about it?
Sure.
Where it fits in or should fit in and.
Kid Biz is only at Goodnow Elementary School.
Okay.
It is not in any of the other elementary schools. It is an expensive program. Goodnow is able to use their money to purchase that program. Some of the other schools purchase other things for their schools. It is literacy, reading passages, and they really like it at Goodnow. I think it's used in 2 grades. I think it's third and fifth. Yeah, third grade and 5th grade use that there. The exact amount, I'm not 100%. I think it was about $4,500
Right.
for that program.
Yeah, so in a way, it's kind of a pilot in some sense at Goodnow. Do you
I think
it
one
was
of our
spread?
teachers somehow connected with that organization. It might have even been at a conference, but I'm not 100% sure, and brought it to our school and asked to try it out, and then we just
Okay.
have
Do
kept
kids
it ever
like it
since.
though?
It depends what you mean by like. So it's one of these things where as you answer the questions, if you're doing well, it keeps ratcheting up the difficulty until you can get some pretty spectacularly difficult stuff to read, which I think is fine.
It's all nonfiction.
seems
It looks like
good.
newspaper
Yeah.
articles. So it's a
Oh.
different type of reading, and then some really, it is challenging questions
Yeah.
for them to answer.
So is Goodnow using that as part of their regular language arts time, or is that something that they're doing like in computer lab?
I think it is a resource, and depending upon the teacher, how they include it into their time. Some may use it during their instructional time, and some may use it during their computer time. Other schools
And homework
use-
is where I saw it,
Okay.
used at night.
Other schools use Study Island. There are other programs that they use, which are very similar. If you get a certain number of questions correctly, it'll ratchet up the reading level and the interest level, and the complexity of the text.
Right.
So that's available to students at home?
Yes. Study
And
Island
we can
is.
connect the topics to, say, our social studies or science. There's a way to search. So if you're teaching a particular topic, you can assign different articles so that when they go in, they pop up right away, and then you could give it as an assignment, a specific one.
Can I ask a question? Does it help remedial students who are having more difficulty? So while it gets harder and harder, and that's good to challenge the more advanced, does it also get easier? if
It
you
will go
can't-
down. If
Yes.
you don't do well, it goes down.
Right.
So it can really be used at all levels?
Right, but-
My question.
I wouldn't say that it was instruction, because it will give you harder or easier questions. It won't help you with the issue that you're having with reading. That will
Got
come
it.
from the teacher.
Yeah.
If we see there's an issue, we can actually then use whatever that type of question was, say, to, as we're teaching our reading, to remember, oh, this was something that was a challenge for some of the kids, like main idea. A lot of kids have a hard time with answering main idea questions, so we know we need to really emphasize that when we're doing like the Journeys program or the small reading groups.
Mary, doesn't allow you to have different level passages or articles on the same topic, so
Yes.
you differentiate
Yep.
in the classroom.
So you could assign everybody the same article, but depending on your reading level, you're getting something that you should be able to read independently.
I'm going to let you finish, but as your presentation, I'm particularly interested in the things that we're doing these days for children who don't learn phonics right away or struggle. So wherever, if it's at the end or wherever.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there's also other programs. Some schools use Reading A to Z, Raz Kids. So there's a lot of these programs that are very similar that provide students with passages and questions. This is just an example of a comprehension, part of a comprehension instruction. On the upper right-hand corner, I have a list of our targeted skills and our targeted strategies for reading. This is K through 6, and this is one part of a lesson. And this one here is author's purpose. So it's just telling about how a teacher would use a think aloud to model their thinking about why an author would write something. And it's just how we would explain to the students, taking the information in this book, thinking about why the author would write this, and it would be to give for information. And a strategy lesson, that was a skill lesson, a strategy lesson for summarizing may include like a graphic organizer, and students might be listing the many tasks guide dogs do in order to assist humans. This one, what it's called Good Dogs, Guide Dogs. It's a story about how guide dogs are used to help people. So we have a strategy and a skill for every lesson that we teach in Council Rock for reading and language arts. All right, so I'm going to move on to elementary writing. And writing in Council Rock's classrooms includes writing in narrative, informational, and persuasive, and argumentative writing. K to 5, we call it persuasive. 6 to 12, it's called argumentative. It's just what it's called, but basically it is persuading someone or arguing a point. We use a workshop approach with modeling and mentor text, and we use interactive writing and independent practice. If you remember for reading, I talked about the we do, I do, we do, and you do. So they always have that model first, and then we do something together before they have independent practice. They're supported through online resources. We integrate technology and digital resources. Focus is on the process, not the product. And the process I'm talking about is like the brainstorming or idea gathering, writing or drafting, revising, which is adding or rearranging or taking something out, putting something else in, editing, and then finally publishing. And every writing lesson focuses both on the form and on the writing traits. I wanted to include some information about spelling and handwriting because I do get a lot of questions about spelling and handwriting. So I wanted to tell you Journey Spelling, some of the different things that they are taught through spelling. And we do offer differentiated instruction. So we have lists of spelling words that are for students who are below level, students who need to be challenged a little bit, and they are available online for teachers. So we talk about word patterns or word families at the primary level, like the at family, cat, at hat, that's included as part of our spelling. Short and long vowels, consonant clusters, vowel pairs, word endings, contractions, compound words, Greek and Latin word origins and patterns, and commonly confused words. And handwriting, we have 2 options for teachers for handwriting. We have Council Rock Handwriting, which is a packet that is available to teachers on the intranet. And we also have some materials that are for purchase, which is from Zaner Gloser. So we teach printing, starts in kindergarten, and cursive is introduced the second half of 2nd grade. So in probably about this time of year, 2nd grade teachers would start instruction in cursive. Speaking and listening. Instruction in speaking and listening begins in kindergarten and it continues throughout the elementary grades. From listening to a whole class story which starts in kindergarten, shorter stories, because it's really important for kids to learn how to listen, gain stamina for listening, because as the grades as they get up in grades, they have to listen for longer periods of time in school. And it's not just for stories, but it's also for instructions and other things like that. So for read alouds to presenting book reviews to research and small group work in classrooms, they're always building on their speaking and listening skills. I want to talk to you a little bit about our assessments for ELA at the elementary grades. So there's a couple purposes that we have for our assessments. One is for grading, of course. Another one is to gather information for ourselves and also to share with parents so that we can plan and differentiate our instruction for our students' needs, and also to help parents help their students at home as well. We have district assessments. Most of our, from grades 3 to 6, we have district assessments 3 times a year, beginning, mid-year, and end of year. And at the primary K, 1 and 2 assessments are continuously ongoing. We do have formal, more formal beginning of the year and ending of the year assessments. We have many options for informal assessments, from classroom observations to running records, which is checking for accuracy when students are reading. We have rubrics for fluency. We have rubrics for writing. We have weekly tests, unit tests. Students are not giving all of these tests, so they're just options for teachers. For example, their weekly test has 4 parts to it. They may not give all 4 parts of the test this week. They would say, I'm going to test comprehension this week. Maybe next week I'll test vocabulary. So we have many options for teachers so that they can gain information about their students' needs in order to plan their instruction. And that's what our formative assessments are for, to help them form instruction. And we have, like I said, we have DRAs, writing prompts, and we're also using some text-dependent analysis assessments that we implemented last year. As you know, PSSA now includes a text-dependent analysis as part of the assessment. So last year we started with teaching kids how to analyze text and respond to text with that analysis in mind. Some of our summative assessments for grading would include, we use SRI, we use our Journeys unit test. We also have many other assessments that we use to gather information for report cards. All right, so what's new in elementary ELA? Right now, I would like to share with you 3 things that are new for us this year. We have Collections, which is a 6th grade literacy program. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. We also are starting something new with Reading Olympics. We're doing Reading Olympics Junior this year, and we're also implementing professional learning communities in the elementary schools, some of the elementary schools. So, Collections is a 6th grade literacy program, and we have a pilot going this year in 5 of our elementary schools. The reason why we started looking for something new for 6th grade was because our 6th grade teachers felt that our 6th grade students needed a little bit more sophisticated text. The texts that are included with the Journeys program were not as sophisticated and complex as our students needed to challenge themselves. So we started looking for something and we thought that our students would benefit from more challenging and complex text. So because they have such an abundance of literacy experiences and background knowledge and personal experiences to draw from, we're trying to match them with texts that are more interesting to them and do have that more sophisticated and complexity to them. I spent a year in a 6th grade classroom doing guided reading with one of the 6th grade teachers, which was last year, because I wanted to see the text and I wanted to see the kids interacting with the text. So after that year, we started looking for materials, and there was a group of 6th grade teachers who came together, and we looked at about, I'd say, 6 different programs. And so they selected one to pilot. So this year they are piloting this program, and it is very different than the Journeys in that it has a lot more close reading, which is looking at a smaller part of the text and really having a really thorough analysis of the text, so that the students can be not only just reading the text for the text itself, but also looking at it at different levels so that they can understand it at different levels as well. It also has a lot of practice options for TDAs, which is the text method analysis. It has a big technology integration, and it's aligned to the Pennsylvania Core Standards. Our Journeys program is also aligned to PA Core Standards. I just wanted to let you know that.
Can I ask you a quick
Yes.
question? Do we like Journeys?
Do we like Journeys?
I've heard very mixed reviews, and I still continue, I don't feel like we've ever, I don't mean we as a district, you get very mixed reviews. I just wonder if, when the next cycle of looking at that is, or is it something you all feel might not have served us in the manner we had hoped?
Well, I think it depends on how the materials are being used and the teacher that's teaching it. We went from a not so consistent of an approach to teaching English language arts to a more consistent approach. We went from not everyone understanding that we're not teaching books, we're teaching kids how to read. And instead of teaching a book, let's say like A Wrinkle in Time, we're teaching kids how to, let's see, pick out the main idea and the details, or summarize, or another strategy, which would be the focus of our lesson instead of a book with 20 questions about that book. So instead of teaching books, we're teaching kids strategies that they can use in every single book that they read. So I think, yes, we like Journeys. Yes, we like teaching in this manner. I don't know if every one of the guided reading smaller books are exciting and thrilling, but our guided reading books are not meant to be exciting or thrilling. It's a little tiny, like 20-minute to half an hour lesson to teach, to reinforce what we've taught in the whole class lesson, so that when those kids get to the books that they have selected to read to themselves, they're using what they're learning in their books that they want to read.
And teachers can still incorporate their own style and approach
Absolutely.
to that, so we're still.
Right, they have to make it their own. Like with any program, it's not necessarily, they give you a script, but it's not necessarily a script. You have to make it your own. You have to understand what it is that you're teaching the students, and then use your language, your vocabulary, and not read from the script.
How many years ago, how old is Journeys?
This is our 4th year.
4th year since the pilot, or 4th year since we've?
This is our 4th year since implementation. Reading Olympics Junior. So in the past, as you all know, we participate in Reading Olympics, which is 5th and 6th grade celebration of reading through the county. So last year, some teachers had asked if they could start a Reading Olympics Junior in district for kids in 2nd and 3rd grade who would like to get together, read some books during either the school day or before school or after school, and then have a celebration at the end of the school year to celebrate what they've done, all the books they've read, their understandings. So a committee was formed, and we asked Bucks County Reading Olympics if we could use the name Reading Olympics Junior, because we didn't want to get in trouble with any copyright things. So they said absolutely. So we have 5 schools that are participating, and how it works is that teachers recruit students on a voluntary basis. It's all voluntary for the kids. They give up one of their recesses a week to come and read books and talk about the books and answer questions about books. And we have a list of about 20 books. They are on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade level. Any kid can join, any student can join. They don't have to be a great reader. Anyone can participate that wants to. So we have some questions about the books, and the kids are also encouraged to write questions about books so that they are really getting to understand books. They don't have to read every book, but there's a list, there's about 10 students on each team, and there's a list of about 20 books. So we say if every student reads 2 books, they don't have to read 2 books, they can read 3 books or 5 books, they can read all the books that they want to read, but it's pretty much voluntary. So in May, we're going to have a celebration at Welsh Elementary School. It's on May 10th. And our students will get together, and it is modeled exactly like regular Reading Olympics. They'll be in different classrooms with their teams. And it's not a competition against the other team that's in there, because you get points for the questions that you get right, and they get points for the questions they get right. So it's just more of a celebration of reading. Everyone will receive a medal, not a medal, a ribbon, and every student will receive a participation certificate. And we are expecting students to be really enthusiastic about it and encouraged about it, and we're really looking forward to it. And I really am recruiting administrators and school board members if anybody would like to come that evening and either, okay, thank you.
Can you send us an invite?
Sure.
So love this idea. I can't even tell you how fantastic I think this is. I was actually, my kids were both involved with this when they were in school, and I was a coach. Well, I worked with the librarian, whatever. Reading Olympics is one of the best things. I love that. And to introduce these younger kids so that they're going to have enthusiasm for it when they're 5th and 6th graders. I got a peek of this, when I saw this, and I emailed Joe about it, what a great way to get kids excited about reading. Can I just ask you, how were the books chosen?
So what we did was we looked at our district approved books, and we selected some books that were on the district approved list. And the reason for that was because we wanted books that we already had. We didn't want to have to go out and purchase books. So we wanted to get books that we had, like not class sets of, but sets of 6 in the schools. And if one school doesn't have one of the books, another school might have a set of the books, so we could share amongst ourselves. We really didn't have a budget for purchasing any new books, so that's why we selected the books that we already have in-house.
What a great idea. And such credit to the teachers who recognized that this was something like an added thing it's really simple in its idea, but the benefits of it are just fantastic.
And January is when we start talking about it to students. We'll be sending out permission letters. And in the winter months, sometimes on a really cold day, it's not too difficult to give up your recess to stay in and read a good book, right? So we thought that might,
How many schools did you say?
5 schools. We sent out information to all 10 schools, and there are teachers at 5 schools who have taken this as a challenge, and we're hoping that everything goes well this year. So
Then other
next year, everyone will participate.
Right.
So they've already picked out their t-shirt colors, and we're serving pretzels and
Do the parents
water.
participate, right?
Sorry,
Parents involved in this?
parents will be invited to come.
Excellent.
Just like regular reading
Yeah,
Olympics,
okay.
yeah, parents will be invited to come.
That's what
They
they-
get to sit in the classrooms and listen.
Great.
So we'll probably serve pretzels and water. I know it sounds like bread and water, but kids like it, and so that's what we'll.
Health food is something you're assured to be a success.
Yes, right, so, we are looking forward to that. Okay, sorry.
It is a great thing, and I think that if you need sets of books to make it happen, that you should have that budget request for us.
Okay. Thank you. All right, PLCs, professional learning communities. I have to speak really fast because I'm going to have to, I think I've gone over my time. So professional learning communities began last year in the elementary ELA. I started a PLC at Churchville Elementary School. There's other PLCs for English language arts at Churchville. This year, Holland came on board. So it's a group of teachers collaborating, using data to help them form their instruction for students, look at engaging enriched students, and also remediation for students who are struggling. It's based on results, and as I said, it's how do we get the students to learn what they need to learn, and how do we enrich those other students. These are my final thoughts. Reading, writing, listening, speaking are taught through the gradual responsibility model that I talked about before. We have a consistent instruction process across all 10 elementary schools. Instruction is planned through a careful examination of performance and formative assessments. Our future plans include collections, Reading Olympics, and PLCs. And thank you for your time. Do you have any questions or comments? Yes.
So, English as second language students, is there something in the Journeys program for them, or are they in construction separate?
There is a part of our teachers' manuals. It does include English language learners resource section to help teachers with students who struggle with English, or students who are just secondary to English language learners. But we do also have the ESL teachers in all of the buildings, and they do collaborate with teachers and use some of the materials from Journeys and also use some of their own materials to help support students. And also, we do have, I just wanted to put this out there, our literacy specialists in each of our buildings do work with some of our students who have English as a second language as well.
So we've talked a little bit about kindergarten, you might have heard this year.
Yes.
So one of the things that we talked about was some students who might have English as second language or struggle with some of that, and they go to first grade and we have kids sitting there reading third grade level books and they can't struggle. So any thoughts around that? Any thoughts around what we are doing currently for kindergarten or maybe what we should be doing?
Well, I think a full-day kindergarten program would be a great thing because it would give us more time to differentiate instruction for all of our students, not just the students who need remediation, but for those students who are already reading third grade books. It's a very short amount of time that students spend with the teacher instructionally because they do also have to learn not only, reading and writing, they also have to learn math and all those other things that that may not be important to me, but are important to for the rest of their life, they'll need those things. So we do differentiate instruction in kindergarten. We do have many opportunities for remediation, not only through the classroom, but the literacy specialists also work with kindergarten students as well. Our neediest kindergarten students.
Thank you.
So when PSSA results come in, how does that translate back to teachers and focusing on the students who have needs that are identified through that?
That's a really good question. And that was one of the first things we used in our PLC groups this year. We looked at data, and some of our data was our PSSA scores. PSSA is divided into, the information that we get is divided by standard. So we look at those standards to see how our students do in those standards. So we can tell if we're really doing very well instructing them in, let's say, conclusions or analysis and evaluations, but they may not be really good on comparing and contrasting or cause and effect. So we look at those standards to see how we can better instruct our students, and we can also look at those results by drill down to the actual students. So we may have 5 students in a particular class who are not really strong and may not do in detail. We can take those 5 students and work extra with them on that specific skill.
So that's happening.
Yes, it is happening.
Because I mean, it's strange to me, if you take the test in the spring, you're not getting the results till later. It's a different teacher working with that student, and so.
Our teachers do have the ability to go in and look at their students' PSSA scores from last year. We have performance tracker in our district, and I personally have gone out to quite a few elementary schools this year and last year. I give a quick review of some of the assessments, how you can use these assessments, how you can look at your students not only for last year's results, you can look at their scores all the way back to kindergarten to see their strengths and weaknesses. And we have it in there color-coded, so you can tell who are struggling students just by a glance, and then you can also drill down into those scores for specific students to see what the actual problems are or difficulties.
So it's the individual teachers that are going in and looking at that data?
Teachers, principals,
Teams do it.
coordinators, yeah. And it's not just for PSSA, we can look at all of our assessments that way.
Right, I mean, I realize that's one.
Right.
It's one thing.
We also have
It's the one that gets the most
yes,
attention.
Yes, it does.
I'm sorry, can I ask another question?
Yes.
Do you think the students are doing their homework in K-6 on computers when it comes to reading and writing?
I think some are, I'm not sure everyone is.
Okay.
I personally don't know the availability of,
I just was curious if you see, you see them
I know that
using it to do reading and English language arts homework, instead of holding a book, are they reading a book online, are they?
there are many teachers who make their assignments online. They can do that through the
Okay, so
Journeys.
that, they would obviously probably do that online.
Yes, they can assign online so that they can go in and
But are they still reading books? Are
They have books in the
I think they
classroom.
prefer books.
Do they?
I've
I'm
had,
just, I don't
we
know.
know had a set of Kindles and the kids really, they liked them for about a minute and then they say, can I have books? Same with some of the Journeys things, they'll read it on there, but sometimes they'll ask like the assessments. They've said, not all, like a mix, will say I prefer a paper copy. So we always give an option for doing it that way. But they do a lot of their writing digitally And now we have Google Classroom that we just started using, and now we can collaborate right online for writing, put our comments in, and we
Yeah.
just get started. They're really seeming like that's something that they're interested in.
I didn't see much of it last year with the sixth grade. It's primarily the presentation.
Books.
They did everything was, everything was hard. They didn't like.
I'm just wondering when it turns, because it definitely
Seventh grade,
turns.
it turned in seventh grade.
It definitely
Last
turns at some point. By the time they're 22, they don't separate from that device. But I don't have little ones anymore, so I don't know when that happens. And I'm wondering if over time it'll get.
I think they like the devices, but I think generally speaking, in fifth grade, that they prefer a paper book, an actual, because an I do too, so I prefer that.
I would,
Yeah.
I think it's just a personal preference.
It
Since
is.
I have two kids who are in their 20s, one will always prefer the actual physical book, one will go is more open to the digital and stuff. But of course, once you get to college, some things are only available digitally. And so it's,
yeah, I just was curious and.
And I think we have to be aware of families not always having
Yes.
many computers or digital devices at home because they may have more than one student. And it may take a lot of time and then sharing and difficulties with that. I just want to say this, I did do a research project last year. My dissertation was on digital literacy. And I did a project out of Holland Elementary School where we looked at using the Nooks and the students and their preferences. So I'm still analyzing my data, but I did find that boys more liked reading digital and girls really, really embraced the print more so. Now, there were variations, like a student here, a student there, but the boys really liked that, the digital.
They can hit the boy next door with it.
Joey's
like, "Rob."
I just want to be sensitive to our time. since
Yes,
We have
sorry.
to early
Yes,
tonight,
sorry.
and we have the secondary, so if everybody's okay, if we can give Andrea a chance and we can go through, and if we have time, we can come back to other questions with elementary, okay?
Have fun, we have.
Thanks.
As long as you know.
25 after.
Okay, thank you. So my name, again, for those of you who weren't here, is Andrea Houston Lingman. I'm the middle school and high school English language arts coordinator. And I thought that I would bring to your attention some of the things that are going on at the secondary level, much of which, if you've had students that go through the program, with some changes that obviously have come along the way. Looking at it a little differently, I've taught in Council Rock for about 20 years, and I've taught from grades 7 through 12. Just about all the courses you can imagine. So it's nice for me to be able to, I think I'm really privileged to be able to see where the kids are coming from, where Pat and our colleagues at the elementary level send them to us ready for the secondary level, and then where we know we have to get them, which is college and career readiness. And that's a huge weight that I know we all take very seriously, and we always have. Council Rock traditionally, since I've been here for years, we've always looked at designing our curriculum through understanding by design. So you look at the end result, you look to see where the students need to be by the time they exit, whatever the grade level, whatever the course, the K-12 education, and you make sure that you design backwards to make sure that you have all the steps that you need. So logically for us, the way it's been for a long, long time is we look at, again, what do you need to enter a career or what do you need to enter college? And we make sure that our senior courses are designed to deliver that. Then, and we do this every time we get a professional development opportunity, which is frequently, we'll have the 12th grade teachers sit together and make sure that we differentiate between what does an AP student need, what does an accelerated student need, what does an honor student need, what does a foundation student need. And they're all the very same skills and the same access to content. It's just you're layering it in a different way of accessibility to make sure that every student will want to go to college will be able to access that textbook that a professor says, go get this. For example, I just had 3 different students who I taught in the last 4 years just stop by this week because they're all coming back and being on break. One of whom is at Hofstra. He was in an AP class last year, and he said he was presented with a 20-page paper just this semester, and he thought it was not a big deal at all because in my class last year, in our classes, he had to write an 8 to 10-page paper, and he chose to use the Lord of the Rings, applying Joseph Campbell's hero's journey in the 3 texts. Then he chose to use it as his grad project, so his paper was almost 20 pages long. He said everyone in the class with him was panicking. They had no idea how to do this, and I thought I've been hearing this for a long time. Our kids go off ready. Whatever they know they need to do, they're ready. So again, we work backwards with that to make sure that the 11th grade teachers are handing off those 11th grade students ready to tackle the last year in Council Rock, the last year that we can actually fix any deficits that are still there or have them address something new that's coming on the horizon. For example, the digital literacy that you've been talking about, how, you know what, next year when you're a freshman in college, you might have to be able to figure out, is this digital resource something that I can access? It looks different than a textbook. This is not what I'm used to. Are you able to do that? So we try to make sure we have those skills too, and we work backwards. 10th grade to 11th grade freshmen, It's one of those transfer years where it's their first year at the high school, it's the first year in a new building, it's the first year with the older students who are telling the pool's on the 3rd floor, not true. Things along those lines where we're helping transition them from that middle school student on a team, which I've taught a team prior to being at House Rock as well, into that high school setting. Similarly, if you work backwards into 7th and 8th grade, the 8th grade teachers, they know those 8th grade students are going off to the high school next year. They better be ready. It's going to be a sink or swim, not really. But we tell them, we'll make sure that it's no longer a team. So we'll make sure you have the skills that you need. And the 7th grade teachers know that they're getting these kids who've been trained so beautifully at the elementary level, with the 6th grade teachers stepping everything up, readying them for middle school, but we're hoping to make sure that they have what they need for those years. So we look at the various bands and standards, and I apologize, there is going to be a color-coded strand and a couple of slides, and I'll try to skip through that as quickly as possible. But just to get an idea of what we do when we sit down as a grade level, and that would be honors, AP, accelerated. Every teacher in that grade level will sit down and look at that strand just so that you can see these are the skills that every student, no matter what level at that grade level, is required to be able to do when you exit. So what we usually like to consider is that the skills are those outcomes, the standards that we know that the students need to be able to achieve. How we get there, the vehicle that we use to get to that end result, that end destination, those are our pieces of literature, our nonfiction, that sort of thing. So that we can switch something in and out between and among various classrooms. For example, I might choose to teach Hamlet in a senior class, another teacher might choose to teach Macbeth. The concepts that we're working on, the things may be similar, may be different, but those skills that students need in order to be able to do well in college and career will be applicable no matter which title we choose. And they're both approved. If you can fit into both, then we would. So here we're basically looking at some of these standards that we need to make sure that we're covering in all of our classes, obviously grades 7 through 12. There's a little variation between and among. And if you look at, say, for example, 7th grade, it'll start at one certain level that builds a bit upon the 6th grade level, and then the 8th grade standard will be a little bit more sophisticated, maybe one word difference, maybe one phrase difference. And then it goes up a little bit more in sophistication and complexity as you go through the various grades. So for example, we take a look at, this is specifically for, I'll work on this 11th to 12th grade band is at the top, and we'll work backwards. So the 12th grade teachers, for example, would look and say, we're the last stop on the Council Rock education train. So our students need to make sure that they are able to determine and analyze the relationship between two or more central ideas of a text, including the development and interaction of the central ideas, provide an objective summary of the text. If you want to differentiate between 12th grade and 11th grade, we know this is the first time we're asking the 11th grader to do some of these skills because it's a band, 11th and 8th grade, 11th and 12th grade skills. So we'll design something that allows them to slowly get into that more sophisticated level of analysis. 12th grade, we know they've had 1 year of experience with this. We know where they're going to need to go in college and career, so we'll step that up just a little bit. It might be the text itself is more sophisticated that they're analyzing. It might be that, for example, with my seniors, I would never take them into our library at North and hand them a book card of materials. They need to be able to go into that library and find these materials, because next year that library is bigger, wherever you're going to go, and it'll be a little scarier because that familiar librarian that's been there for those 4 years is not there anymore. So you need to be able to find these materials more independently. So 11th grade teachers, they might consider putting a database together or some sort of search engine together so that they have a little bit of an idea of where to go. So we'll backwards plan and make sure that they have what they need in order to be successful when they exit. If you look at the color combination between the 9th and 10th grade band and the 11th and 12th grade band, I highlighted in red. The 9th and 10th graders are expected to determine a central idea of a text. If you look at the 11th and 12th grade band, they're expected to determine and analyze the relationship between two or more. So slightly more sophisticated, and again, depending on the title that you're looking at for criticism, it's going to be something that is an additional layer. You're not giving those other skills up. You've accomplished that, you've mastered that, now let's add one more. And that'll be something that you'll be expected to do in future once you leave us. I repeated the 9th and 10th grade band. At the top is the one that we just saw, just so you can compare to see, okay, so how do we get the 8th grade ready for the 9th grade and the 7th grade ready for the 8th grade? So again, that same concept, where the 9th graders are expected to determine a central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course. The 8th graders are only expected to determine a central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course of the text, including its relationship to supporting ideas, whereas the 9th and 10th graders need to include how it emerges and it is shaped by and refined by specific details. So that extra layer, and that's something that in content and focus, when you're looking at student writing, that would be evident. If they weren't able to do that extra layer, we would be able to redirect them and help them see where it is. Okay, you've done this before. Now here's this little piece that you've missed. Let's see where we can find that and help you analyze through close reading of your various sources to figure out how to get that in there. 7th grade, they would determine 2 or more central ideas in a text and analyze their development over the course of the text. But if you look up above that, as I have in green, the 7th graders aren't asked to include the relationship to supporting ideas. It's a really sophisticated skill. We're just getting them from the elementary experience. We want to train them to start thinking in a sophisticated fashion for a 7th grader, and then for an 8th grader, and then for a 9th grader. So again, we hope that we can make sure that by looking at each student's writing over the course of every single year, that we can get an idea of what are we doing that's working, and if it's not working, by analyzing student writing and analyzing their scoring on a shared rubric, especially by the end of the year, how are we going to change that? How are we going to make sure that the students are ready? This is one of the pieces of information that Pat actually referenced just a minute ago, where the current trend in standardized testing of any kind, and that is from KSSA, Keystones, ACTs, SATs, college placement, everything. There's a huge focus on being able to cite textual evidence. And if you think about it, in a way that many of us have been asked to take standardized tests in our pasts, we were asked to read something and be able to identify a specific answer. Well, now the kids are asked to not only be able to find a specific answer, that's not the right answer to the question. The right answer to the question is, where's the evidence? So that's a secondary skill. We have to make sure that we're allowing them enough practice to be able to closely read and cite where that information comes from. By giving them examples. Here's one from a Keystone literature nonfiction question. And nonfiction has always been an area that we all need to focus on. So the question was, based on the information in the passage, how does the fiber in apples relate to improved heart health? So if you look at the 4 answers, if you don't really understand the passage, any one of them, whether true or not, any one of them seem like a positive. They seem like something that could relate to improved heart health, but only one, or C, fiber can help keep bad cholesterol levels under control. Only that will be found in that passage. So we need to train the students to be able to find that in increasingly more sophisticated text, nonfiction and fiction included. Common assessments that we have in secondary English language arts. We have common final exams, and that's something that we would obviously give towards the end of the year, and that includes the final essay. So the final essay is something that every course within a grade level would design one specific essay using the same rubric so that all students are writing to the same task. And again, we use that same rubric throughout the year, so we're firm in our understanding of, are the students including the focus that they need to. Vocabulary quizzes, depending on the course, we might have something like a shared group of vocabulary quizzes for AP Literature, any of the Sadler or Oxford vocab texts that we use from grades 9 through 12, if you've seen them, they're orange. They're the same color when I took them too. We have shared common assessments for those, so we can also analyze the data and see, well, as the book, for example, takes out 3 words in one unit and then replaces it with 3, are our students able to grasp those? They're becoming a little bit different in their focus. Most likely they're going to become different as well as we change some of the testing that we have with the SAT changing its format. I expect to see those vocab books to change too. We need to make sure we're addressing those skills at the same time. So we revisit the data from the common assessments we have there too. And at the middle level, they use Scholastic Reading Inventory. You might see that as SRI. We use that as well to analyze the data of the students' reading ability. So when we take our professional development time in 1st June, at the end of the year, and then in August, as soon as we come back, we look at the data. We look at the final exam data just to make sure that what we thought, for example, was a new final exam, where we thought this was going to be, let's say, easier in one section, because the students were just having a really hard time with these 2 questions. We revise them, we get them out with the data. Did they do better? Did they not? Did they do better? Was it because of our instruction, or was it because the question was working more clearly? Typical things that we would have to do within those first couple of days when we start back to the year. So we have time to change it before we have to have an assessment again at the end of the year. We'll have to continue just a little bit further down to that next one. We'll make sure that we hang on to these notes so that when we do make our adjustments, make our revisions, revise our final exams and our other common assessments, we put them, including essays, we put them onto Curriculum Connector. We look at the data from the following group. What was the trend? Did we make sure that we did what we were trying to do in these efforts? And if not, time to revise again. This is the Pennsylvania Domain Scoring Guide, which we use for all of our final essays from 7th grade through 12th grade. Many school districts use the same one. You will probably see some other rubrics that come home with other assignments that teachers might use that are more sophisticated, more meaty. They've got more details. But for something that's a common assessment, we would use a common rubric. So this would be it. On the horizon for secondary, we have a pilot that is currently underway. We have not yet obtained the books, but we're writing to make sure that we have everything so that we can ask for the books. For new fiction titles in grades 7 through 12, and you'll see that repeated in the high schools as well. I believe in the 20 years I've been here, I could be overestimating, but I think there have maybe been 1 to 2 new titles in any course the entire time. So as wonderful as the classics are, there are some times where there's a great new book that came out that has something that's more relevant, that's more recent, that the teachers would love to get to the kids, and not something that they've all read like a Harry Potter, because they'll have that, like, it's something a little more off the beaten path. It'd be a great opportunity to get them really hooked and find something that they love, especially if it's something different. So we're looking for a number of titles there. I believe that in the middle schools, we're looking at about 8 titles, and in the high schools, currently, it might be about 6 to 7 titles that we're looking to have paperwork already taken care of and submitted for that. As far as the middle schools is concerned, currently they have, it's a common assessment that's not a final exam, but they have a common assessment that is either used not cumulatively for a grade, but to assess student learning throughout the course of the year. It's not, again, it's not a final exam, but currently it's the same test for Honors 7 and Academic 7 and Honors 8 and Academic 8. And we've had a lot of talk at the middle school level that that's not how it operates at the high school. So why would it be that way here? That it's very frustrating for the academic students to be taking this assessment that's challenging. It's not something that we feel that they should be stressed about at that point in the year. They should be able to accomplish what we know that they needed to do well, and then celebrate the fact that they did it well, rather than get frustrated by this assessment. So that's something that we've been working on for about 1.5 years. If you look further down in the high school, we're also having a PLC that's running at North. It's a 9th grade PLC that I'm involved in too. And much like Pat had said, we're looking at data. We start off with data. We take a look at how our students' PSSA scores were from prior years, 9th grade, 8th grade specifically. We look at the grammar free test that we've been using for a long time, see how the students score on that. We use the very first essay that they write in the beginning of the year using that same domain scoring guide that you just saw. And we use the first vocab, the common assessment first vocab, and just look at the data and see, okay, first of all, are the students placed properly? Are the students that we would expect to have been in honor scoring how we thought? Are they not? Okay, what's wrong? What are we doing differently that we should make sure that we adjust for the following year? We also look at that data to just see as far as our practices are concerned. So if teacher A is having a vocab success rate of, say, 82% average, and teacher B is 77, why? What techniques are being done? It's the same words, it's the same unit, it's the same test. So we'll have a conversation in our professional development days to just make sure we can share with each other what's being more successful.
So the PLC is all English teachers?
For this one, it is. I know there are other places where it's not. I know there's something that's running at Churchville, correct? That's multi-curricular, but for us, it's just 9th grade teachers for this one.
All of them?
No, it's Foundations English 9, English 9, and then we've gotten the data from the Honors 9 teachers, but they haven't been joining us this year. I think they'll be able to next year. This will definitely be more than a 1-year cycle, this particular PLC. We're just getting started. It's the first year.
What is the restriction on the new titles? What causes that restriction? If it's beneficial to the kids,
I don't really think there is one. I think we just have to make sure that somebody needs to take the initiative, who teaches the course, having been there for so many years, to say, I think we're lacking, let's say, a strong female protagonist. We need to find one. So go do some reading, we get a committee together, they'll all read it, we'll all go through the recommendations. If we all agree that this is something that would be worthwhile as an option, I would rather it be an option first before it were required. Then we go through the paperwork to make sure that it's approved. It goes through an approval system so that we make sure that it's sensitive to all cultures, to all genders. It's got nothing offensive in it for that particular grade level. And then if it gets approved, we're good to go.
And how many times has that happened in 20 years?
In my experience at the high school, I was at the junior high before the split came. So that was probably for 8 to 10 years. So I've been at the high school since. I'd say every year there's a discussion of bringing in new titles. And what very often happens is a committee will get together and they'll all read a book and half of them say, For example, I was on a committee 9th grade, so we're talking at least 7 years ago. The Lovely Bones was being discussed. If you've seen the movie, read the book, wonderful. Do I want to make that a 9th grade book? No, it's a beautiful book, but I wouldn't feel that it's something that I could share with the entire class comfortably. So very often what happens is you start the initiative and you come up with titles that just don't meet success from the teacher's perspective. But again, we did manage to really rally the troops this last year and have come up with several titles that folks are happy with.
How many titles changed? I mean, I'll take it one step further. When was the last time, I mean, how often do titles get inserted? in a
Well,
10-year period?
what's nice about, let's say the 10-year period, what's nice about our curriculum is we've been so fortunate in having so many choices. That there could be, for example, there could be 15 novels, not plays, not collections of short stories, not projects, just 15 novels that a particular course a teacher is allowed to teach. I only have time to get in 6, plus the short stories and the plays and nonfiction reading as well. So I might have a lot of variety from year to year, 5 years, and might decide, no, I do want to start reading this, for example. I used to read To Kill a Mockingbird, Raisin in the Sun. I stopped reading Raisin in the Sun. I think figuring out how to do both. So we have a lot of choice. It's just a question of, are we at the point now where we can offer some more choice, something that's more current? I think that's where we've finally gotten to.
I'm experiencing dating. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the books. I'm experiencing dating.
Teachers agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and the classics should stay, absolutely, need to keep those.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a few additional relevant, more recent options.
So did we get the question answered? So how many new titles have you seen?
Oh, to be honest, and I didn't even teach this course, but I don't believe I've seen a new title that has come in since I've taught 9th through 12th grade at North since the split.
No, I think that's a problem. I don't
No,
know.
there is one, and or two, and of course that I don't teach.
It's Jerry.
I mean, it's something that teachers have long wanted, it's just labor intensive, so.
It's what?
Can you
Labor
hear?
intensive, so I think we've got to the point where we did it. Great. We're ready.
And you just add, you don't take out, is that what you were saying? Like, you just-
Well, what we would do right now is.
Yeah, we're still in academic standards.
15 titles to choose from, 16. And then if it turns out that people stop choosing one of those other more dated titles, we won't buy new copies of that. When they go, they go.
One of the things that I love the most of what you discussed, and I've certainly seen it through my kids, is the level of reflection. I love that there is a discussion of, okay, 4 kids didn't do so well, but everybody else did great. We don't really have a problem here. We can deal with these 4 kids, as opposed to maybe we need to make some changes if it's a percentage of kids or whatever. I love that sort of open-minded, it's not always the kids, it's not always the instruction. I think that just keeps moving us further and
It's a
further.
very, very collaborative department, very collaborative group of teachers.
And I also like that it gets infused more over time. I see with, it's not just novels, it's, the variety of text, the emphasis on the nonfiction. I mean, these are all things that obviously, it aligns with, the standards, but for preparation for them in college, that's such a critical thing.
And the digital literacy is something that
Right.
we've been coming along in recent years as well, because it's, again, many of the sources you're reading are not PDFs, they are only electronic forms. So do you know how to access them?
You talked about that each grade level gets together, which I think is great. Do they also get parallel, so all the AP teachers get together?
Yes.
So it's up and down and across?
Absolutely, that's a great question, yes. I taught AP 12 for the last several years as well, so we would sit down with the AP 11 teachers. Actually, when we wrote the courses,
Yes.
when we had to be reviewed by the board, we sat together, all of us, North, South, 11th, 12th, we all sat together.
I would just think it would have to go both ways, yeah.
Absolutely, great, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is so informative, and it's great to hear what everybody's doing. Thank you
For
so
speed
much.
talking. You did
Don't
it
tell
well.
my public speaking skills quickly.
Stop.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.